Hello, my name is Dion Davis, and I'm so thrilled to finally be starting our semester together. I've had students ask me if they should call me Dr. Davis, but I'm happy for you to just call me Dion. John and I started talking about his sabbatical last January, which, if you don't know, it's a very big deal for a professor to be granted a sabbatical so they can focus on their own creative activities. Basically, it means that CSU loves John, understandably, and wants to invest in him for a long time to come. But I'm so glad that John's sabbatical means that I get to meet and work with all of you. Ever since January, I've been looking forward to getting to know you and spending a semester with you talking about music and the horn. This horn class today is going to start with a big introduction to how the semester will work, so it will cover a lot of info. I'll take a few minutes here at the beginning to fill you in on my background because I have a large variety of experiences in the music business that you may want to draw upon. If there's anything I mention that you're especially interested in or have more questions about, please email me anytime. I'm from North Alabama, 30 minutes from where John grew up. As he mentioned, we had the same horn teacher in high school. Although John's a few years older than me, I remember playing quartets with him at our teacher's house, probably when he was home for college over the summer. I was lucky enough to go to Interlochen Arts Academy in Michigan for my senior year of high school, which was kind of like getting started on my college music training a year early. As John mentioned, we both studied in Chicago. I went to Northwestern for undergrad and studied with Gail Williams, who's one of the best-known horn players in the country, if not the world. I studied with Bill Barnowitz, who is principal horn in the Milwaukee Symphony, and when I was at Northwestern, we had a visiting professor for a semester, Dave Crable, who was principal in San Francisco for many years. I was in the Civic Orchestra of Chicago for my senior year of undergrad, but being in that group and finishing undergrad at the same time really burned me out. So after my experience in Civic, I didn't really want to play in an orchestra for a living. After graduating, I spent 2 years as the head of the circulation desk at the beautiful music library at Northwestern University. There's this whole library just full of scores, books about music, music journals, CDs, a listening room, all in this gorgeous old Gothic type building. It's amazing. I felt like I had every piece of music ever written at my fingertips. And one of the most fun ways I've learned about music was flipping through items that patrons were checking out or returning. As a side note, my plan B around being a musician has always focused on being dependable and employable. Having a side hustle is common for musicians even in the best of times, especially in a big city like Chicago or Denver. Work is honorable, even Starbucks, where my husband and I both have held jobs. But if you can find part-time work around music and they can give you a chance to go play gigs because they understand your devotion, even better. So during the time I worked at the music library, some friends of mine from Civic and I started Fifth House Ensemble, which became a well-renowned professional chamber ensemble that performed across the country. I'll spend one of our horn classes telling you all about my experiences in Fifth House, which I hope will inspire creativity in the ways you approach your audience as a performer, a director, or an educator. I was a member of Fifth House for 6 years, during which time I also freelanced actively in Chicago, taught horn lessons, and earned my master's degree at DePaul University, where I studied with Odo Carrillo from the Chicago Symphony and John Bowen, who's principal in the Chicago Lyric Opera. There was 1 year in the middle of that 6-year stretch where my now husband Adam and I did something really amazing. Adam is a fantastic tuba player, and we met at DePaul where he came to do a postmaster certificate just to study with the tuba professor there. After a year at DePaul, he won a 1-year position in the Honolulu Symphony, and we moved to Hawaii together. In addition to subbing with the symphony and doing other freelancing on the island, whatever was around, I was fortunate enough to work full-time for the Musicians Association of Hawaii, which is the name of the local branch of the American Federation of Musicians, or the AFM, in Honolulu. That's what we call the Musicians Union. I learned so much about what a musicians union is for, in particular because while we were in Honolulu, the symphony started to go bankrupt. I'm still a proud supporter and member of the Musicians Union today, and serve as union steward for my orchestra, which basically means that I study the contract and make sure that everything that we agreed upon with our orchestra management is followed at rehearsals. After my time with Fifth House and our years freelancing in Chicago, Adam and I decided that we enjoyed teaching so much that we should get our doctoral degrees so that we could apply to teach at universities. We narrowed all of our choices down to one favorite, the University of Utah, based on the price, the city, and the wonderful horn and tuba professors there. My teacher from the University of Utah, Steve Proser, is my very favorite teacher that I ever had on the horn, and I think about him a lot while I'm passing our trade on to students like you. While at the University of Utah, I won my job as assistant principal horn of the Boulder Phil, and we'll discuss in a later horn class what that position means exactly. I would continue to drive once a month to Colorado to play with my orchestra, even after getting a job teaching at the University of Nevada, Reno following graduation. In my third year of teaching in Nevada, I was here in Colorado for a concert when I became very ill. They still don't know what from. I was hospitalized for 2 weeks and had 2 emergency surgeries. And when I got home, my doctor said that the infection I had was so strong that I might have died. So after a lot of long, hard soul searching, I decided I wasn't doing enough of what I really wanted and needed to be doing to be happy, and that's playing music. And so with Adam's encouragement, I decided to resign my job and move here to Colorado, where, in regular times anyway, there is much more music making in my life. There are a handful of other things I've done that you might be interested in for your own purposes. I've recorded video game soundtracks at one of the huge recording studios in California. I've played several summer-long opera and musical festivals. I've also written grants to fund music projects that I wanted to create for myself. In addition, I have friends who work in all areas of the music world, so if you have any questions about any corner of our industry, please ask, and I'll be happy to see what I can find out. I wanted to mention in my last year of teaching at UNR, I did a series of masterclasses here in Colorado, and one of those masterclasses was at CSU. So I'm excited to see if any of you seniors were students that I met that fall. As I mentioned before, the life of a musician often means having that side job to keep you afloat. These days, I feel so lucky to have a part-time job as an assistant to a real estate agent so that I can work from home. She knows that I'm a musician and has been very flexible when I've needed to adjust my schedule for gigs. If you can't get a part-time job in music, then having a job that respects your work as a musician is the next best thing. Because of my initial serious illness and a second recurrence last year, my immunity is compromised and I'm in the high-risk category. I've had a terrible 2-week flu and norovirus, which was no fun since my first stay in the hospital, so I know my immunity has issues. That means that my husband and I have moved all of our work online until there's a vaccine or better treatments for COVID. We're lucky that both of our orchestras, Adam plays for the Boise Philharmonic in Idaho, are planning to have seasons that include online elements. John and the administration at CSU know my situation and are in complete support of my choice to teach you entirely online this semester, both in our lessons and in horn class. Also, because of my regular part-time work schedule, I have very little wiggle room to reschedule lessons. I think that with all the practice room protocols that CSU is putting in place for you guys, it may be very difficult for you to reschedule lessons this semester. So we'll plan to stick to our regular lesson schedule unless there are absolutely unavoidable emergencies. I so wish that I could meet and work with all of you in person, but even though I need to teach you long distance for health reasons, I have a jam-packed and exciting semester prepared for you. I'd also like to mention how happy I was to see that many of you are music education majors. As I told some of you already, I come from a large family of educators. My mom is a 4th grade teacher. I had a sister who was a high school math teacher, and another sister and a brother who were band directors. That sister is now an elementary music teacher, and my brother went on to be in administration, currently as a principal. I've been around educators all my life and have a deep respect for that mission. But truthfully, Even those of you who are performance majors are likely to teach someone about music at some point in your life. That's because the learning of music performance is one of humanity's greatest trades. A trade is a skilled job that involves working with your hands and acquiring specialized training, and that definitely describes playing an instrument. The way that you learn a trade is to study with other people who have experience, and those people learned their trade the exact same way. Knowing how to play an instrument, especially to the level that you will be able to play after studying that instrument intensely for 4 or more years, is such a desirable skill to acquire. Other people will want to learn the things that you know. So many performers go on to be teachers and mentors. With that in mind, I plan to share some small teaching tips along the way that I've learned from my experiences in almost 25 years of private teaching. Another reason I think it's wonderful that there are so many future music educators here in the CSU Horn Studio is because, to me, the mission of being a musician is to bring artistry and pleasure to the community directly around you. It's tempting when considering who your audience might be to think on a global scale these days, because with the internet, the world is just a click away. But I feel very strongly that the audience you can have the most important impact on is the community right around you. For me as a performer, that's meant looking for opportunities to play music or produce concerts that connect to what's happening in my community right now. I'll talk more about this when I introduce you to Fifth House Ensemble. But for now, I want you to know how much I respect your choice to bring artistry and pleasure to your future community through teaching young humans the joys of making music so that they can enjoy and share that skill for the rest of their lives. But in addition to being future educators, you are also all performers. So I'm primarily here to teach you what I know about playing and performing on this instrument. I know many band directors who are excellent musicians and play in their local band or orchestra, some of whom even had to audition to get in, like the fantastic second horn player Jeff in my orchestra in Boulder, who's a middle school band director and a great horn player. So my hope is that from this semester, you can take away a nice mix of skills and knowledge that help you be not just a better future educator, but a better musician overall. Because of the format of our horn class this semester, some of the interactive elements that we would normally do in a horn class just aren't possible. Sadly, we won't be able to do fun things like horn choir or learning parts to full orchestral work, the kinds of things where we can all make music together. But I'm going to try very hard to include interactive elements and prompts throughout our horn classes so that you can stop the video and experiment with anything that appeals to you. For some of you, there will be exercises that you're maybe not quite ready for yet, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't know about them. So if you find a cool exercise that you want to be able to do someday, take a few minutes to figure out for yourself, how can I modify this so that I can start with the easy parts of this exercise and slowly build up to the challenges? There's nothing like having a cool goal to get you motivated. Just like John said, I do not have the corner on solutions to all the many issues that playing our instrument presents. Besides, we all learn and think differently. As I told you before, I've had many horn teachers in life, and there are elements of my practice life and playing approach that I can trace back to each one of them. I'm also still learning as a player and as a musician, which is part of what makes being a musician such a compelling lifelong calling. But I do have a large collection of ideas and exercises that have helped me in my musical journey along the way and former students, and I hope to share with you as many of those things as I can think of. I invite you to be open-minded, to experiment, and to try a thing 2 or 3 times before you decide whether it works for you. Then, just like we do with the advice of all of the teachers that we collect throughout life, stick with the ideas and the exercises that work best for you. So let's take a look at your syllabus together. You're going to be able to find a copy of this in our documents folder. It's so early on when I'm making this video that I don't know exactly where our shared documents are going to be housed yet, but the most likely candidate is Canvas. So I will write the location of our documents on your syllabus before I upload it for you. So even though I don't know that information yet, you will by the time we get there. So, also, if you are studying with Sean, he will provide you a copy of his syllabus, and he'll talk through with you how his lessons are going to work differently than mine, though Sean's students will have my horn class requirements and will be attending my horn class and have to do attendance credit for that. You may have slightly different attendance credit for that than my students every once in a while, so just keep your eyes open for that. So yes, Sean will let you know about that, although a lot of parts of our two syllabi will be congruent. So let's take a look at the document. Here you can see I'm the instructor, Dr. Dion Davis. You can just call me Dion, and my email address will help you figure out how to spell my name, because I'm the only person I know who has their first name at gmail.com. So that's pretty cool. And the reason I did that was so people would have to learn how to spell my name. It's tough. So there's my phone number there. I love texting. Texting is a great way to get a hold of me. In fact, texting, email, and then phone calls are the preferred order for getting a hold of me. Horn lessons will be a place for you to grow your knowledge of and abilities on your instrument. It'll also be a place where you can experiment, mess up, and ask questions, and that is so important. I want you to know that horn lessons are a place where not only can you make mistakes, I want you to make your mistakes in horn lessons. If you make your mistakes while I'm there, I can hear what happened and we can kind of troubleshoot together. Why did that happen? And maybe what could we do to fix it? So I don't ever want you to be embarrassed to make a mistake in your lesson. In fact, I want to hear your mistakes. And I'm not going to be embarrassed to make a mistake in front of you guys either. You're going to hear me make mistakes. And I think that's healthy for you to hear that, because professionals make mistakes and you shouldn't expect that that's the level that you need to achieve perfection, to be a professional. So, let's see. Please bring determination and a sense of curiosity to your horn lessons. They are one of the most personally driven parts of your music education. So I can't supply determination and I can't supply a sense of curiosity for you, but if you can bring those things, man, we're going to take off together. Student learning objectives. These are things that I hope that you will learn over the course of our semester together. The first one is performance practices to improve personal ability on the horn. The second is repertoire for horn, including solos, excerpts, and etudes. And the third is that you'll engage in horn class where various aspects of being an informed horn player, a healthy musician, and a thoughtful colleague will be explored. So as for meeting times, there are two components to this class. There's your lesson time, one lesson a week for 1 hour. If you're my student, Sean's students are half-hour lessons. And horn class, which will be roughly, hopefully, an hour long. We'll see. We'll talk about that a little bit later. If you need to reschedule a lesson, it may be almost impossible this semester because of the restrictions that CSU has to put in place around, how much time rooms have to be emptied out around people being in them so that the air can completely exchange and be healthy for someone else to be in there, may prevent us from being able to have any wiggle room in our schedule. But even besides that, I have a very tight schedule as well, and it will be very difficult for me to reschedule. So please try not to reschedule your lessons. Of course, obviously, if you get sick, hopefully not big sick, but if you get sick, obviously we're going to reschedule. But if you have to do that, please let me know right away. And I say here on your syllabus by email, but you can text me too. That's just fine. Each student gets 14 lessons per semester, and there'll be 14 horn classes as well. So, horn class is going to take an unusual format this fall. Normally, we'd all be together so we could perform together, play horn choir music, play horn quartets, so much fun stuff. And I would love to be around to be able to play with you guys, so I am really sad about that. But because horn classes will be all online, I've decided to do a pre-taped horn class, and there'll be 14 of them, as I mentioned just a minute ago. Here's how it's going to work. So each week I'm going to post a horn class video on Canvas. So I'm going to do it the Monday before the lesson that horn class corresponds to. So if you have your lesson number 1 on Monday of the first week of class, I'm going to post your horn class number 1 the previous Monday so that you have a whole week to watch that horn class. If your lesson's on Friday, you're going to have a week and a half to watch that horn class if you'd like. And you can watch the video anytime during that week. So I'll always put them up a week the Monday before, so that you have plenty of time to watch them. And at the end of each video, there's going to be an attendance assignment. Sometimes everyone in the studio will have the same assignment. Sometimes my students and Sean's assignments will be different. Sean's students' assignments will be different. And you're going to send your attendance assignment to your own personal lesson teacher every week. If you watch your video a week before your lesson, go ahead and do the attendance assignment and send it in. You don't have to wait. But those attendance assignments are due at the latest 24 hours before your lesson. And the reason for that is because for my students, we're doing a fun project this semester, and I'm going to need a little time with some of your attendance assignments before I meet you in your lesson the next day so that we can do some steps in our project with them. And also, Sean and I are going to need time to review some of your assignments or little videos. We're going to need time to review and things like that before we see you the next day. So 24 hours, that's your deadline every week, 24 hours before your lesson. Let's see, unexcused absences in studio class will negatively impact your grade. And studio class attendance accounts for 30% of your final average. So we'll talk on the next page of your syllabus about how attendance is going to work overall. For you to know. So the length of each of our 14 horn classes is going to vary because I cannot, like I would normally do in a class, kind of keep an eye on the watch, move things ahead a little bit here, and know we have a little more time to, play music if we get done with some other things quicker, So unfortunately, I'm going to have to put things together ahead of time and hope they're loosely the right length. So some videos may go over that hour, and I'm so sorry. Please forgive me when that happens. But I do want you to know, I already know that there are videos that will be less than an hour. So I hope that trade-off makes it a little better for you. So it's just, impossible for me to control just because of the format, and I apologize in advance for when that will inevitably happen. Okay, required materials. For horn lessons, you're going to be asked to buy, and this is for my students. I'll mention something about Sean's students a little further down. You'll be asked to buy 1 piece of sheet music for your jury, or for those of you who won't have juries, the solo that we're going to study together this semester. If you're studying with me, I'm going to provide your etudes throughout the semester. You can find excerpts for your lessons at the International Horn Society webpage listed below on our online resources. So you can print those out. I would print them out. I would not just read them off your screen because you're going to want to make markings that you keep, forever. I've still got my college markings from, excerpts that I did with my teachers in undergrad. So those are great resources to have. Let's see. So Sean may ask his students to buy additional materials for study. So just be prepared for that. Here is a good couple of little sentences here at the end of required materials that's going to be really helpful for you. All students should bring their horn, music, and a pencil to each lesson. That's a gimme. So if you're having a lesson in person, that's what you need, your horn, your music, and a pencil. But students who are having online lessons will also need a stand, a chair, a computer, and a microphone. So there's your list of everything that you need when you're getting set up to have an online lesson. And I know all of my students will have online lessons. Some of Sean's students will have online lessons. And if anything happens at school that we end up online for the rest of the semester, keep this in mind. I'll say if you were doing your lessons in person, Sean's students, and then we have to switch to all online lessons and you need a microphone, please let me know and I'll let the school know. Okay, grades. 40% lesson preparation. So the way I do my grading for lessons, I give you one lesson grade a week. I average together all of your lesson grades at the end of the semester, and then that accounts for 40% of your overall grade. And for me, I'm not grading how you play, I'm grading how well you prepared for your lesson, because I can tell if you practiced or not. That's easy. So all I need to know is that you tried, that you worked. That's what I'm grading. 30% horn class attendance. Each horn class attendance assignment that is not submitted by 24 hours before your scheduled lesson for the week will result in the loss of one letter grade from your attendance grade. So that means that this 30% chunk of your grade, if you don't turn in one of your horn classes, will go from an A down to an A minus. And if you miss 2 horn classes, then you're already at a B. So you're definitely going to want to turn in these horn class attendance assignments. Plus, these videos are going to be really fun. I got lots of stuff to share with you guys, and I have a really fun project I'm very excited about for you. So I definitely want you to have an incentive to get your stuff in on time so we can get the most out of it. 20% of your grade will be from 4 excerpt listening assignments. You will have 4 written assignments related to excerpts over the course of your semester. We're going to discuss how to do these assignments in your lessons individually. These are lesson assignments. These are not related to your horn class attendance. And then 10% is the grade for your jury or your solo performance that you're going to do for me. So first of all, I want to say that's a low number on purpose, because I would rather you get graded 40% on how well you prepared for your jury than to get graded that much on how well you played one day. It's more important to me what you learned along the way. So the second thing I want to say about this is that this gives us an opportunity to talk about how juries are going to work this semester, because of course everything's topsy-turvy, right? So first year undergrads and grads will not play a jury this year. And the reason they're doing that is so they can have enough time and space to air everything out in between performances to try to make everything safe. For everyone else, juries will happen the week before fall break, and that's the last week that classes will be held on campus. So that's November 16th through 20th. Now, when you go to schedule your jury time, please try to get a time after your lesson for that week, because in your lesson that week, we're going to do like a last run of your jury. So I don't know if it's possible, because they may have the horn players in a block. It may not be possible for you to do that. But if you have a Friday lesson, a Thursday lesson, see if you can get, a time after your jury. And if not, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Everything after break is going to be online, which, for your purposes and my purposes, we're online already anyway, but all of your other classes will be online, so probably you won't be coming back home after break. For first year undergrads and grads who are not performing a jury, you're still going to learn a horn solo with me, and I'm going to have you perform your solo piece for me for this graded portion that same week in your 13th lesson, so November 16th through 20th. So you should still prepare for a performance that week before fall break. Here's a list of online resources because we are all online, so there's lots of resources. I'm planning to do video lessons through Microsoft Teams because that's what is provided to me by CSU. I haven't experimented with it yet. I will. I imagine that you guys did this last fall or last spring through Teams, that you did your lessons online through Teams. If it doesn't work for whatever reason, the school's offered to purchase me a Zoom account, but I'm going to try to make it work through this because dollars are tight with all the PPE everybody has to buy. So we'll see what we can do. Canvas, this is where your horn class is going to be posted on Monday, the week before it's due. I think it's also going to be where your horn class documents are stored for download. If not, they might be on Dropbox or OneNote. We'll see. I am going to put up a YouTube page for our studio for this semester. And on that page, I'm going to put videos of me playing your weekly scales. And this is so that you can go there and practice with me if you'd like. I was thinking about, if normally I was playing next to you in a lesson, I would just play your scales with you. I'm not going to grade you on your scales. I just want you, to get a chance to learn them and practice them. And it helps me hear all your fundamentals and give you tips here and there. Normally, I'd play along with you. So I thought, how can I do that this semester? So I'm going to put up these videos of me playing all of your major and minor scales. I'm going to put the sheet music for the scales on top of the video so that you have the notes that you're going to play right there in front of you. Now, the video, I think I'm going to record the scales at quarter note equals 68 with a quarter note and then eighth note pattern. So like da, 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 da. So if that's too fast for you on some scales, I would recommend just pausing the video and keeping that sheet music up there and practice your scale early in the week, just looking at the sheet music, nice and slow, just quarter notes. And then see if you can build up to the point where you can play with me at that tempo. It's not too fast. And I don't mind even if you come to your lesson and want to play that YouTube video while you play along, especially for some of the low scales that are sort of hard, to get used to starting on. So just some thoughts for you on scales. So I should have, by the time you see the syllabus, I should have the link there for that. Then there's the link for the International Horn Society's horn excerpts page. They have sheet music that you can print out. I think sometimes you have to kind of grab the picture and just put it in a Word doc and print it out that way. It's super easy though, and if you need help doing that, just let me know. And they also have recordings of great orchestras, great horn players, and great orchestras throughout history, throughout the history of recording, playing these excerpts so that you can listen and compare and learn how it goes. So we're going to use that for our 4 excerpt listening assignments in our lessons. And then below that, steveparkhornmusic.net. This guy is great. He's a middle school band director back in Utah. I know him. I've played gigs with him. He's a really super nice guy and a great horn player, very active horn player. And so he also teaches horn lessons, and he has created and put on this page a collection of his MP3 accompaniments to horn solos. This is such a great resource. I use this when I practice, like if I'm going to, perform Mozart, I'll practice it with the accompaniment here. It's so easy. You can just download the MP3 and play it on your iTunes or whatever. And for those of you who are not playing a jury, but are just playing a solo performance with me, if you want to use this MP3 accompaniment, not only as practice, but also as a performance tool when you're performing for me in that week before fall break, that's great. And if you do that, I hope you'll just donate a few bucks to him. He has a link on the page. So, and then IMSLP, I hope you know about, also known as the Petrucci Project. This is an amazing website. It has sheet music that you can download that's no longer under copyright, which includes a lot of the classical canon, including some horn solos. So this is a great place to go look for your Strausses, your Mozarts. Maybe they don't have your favorite editions, but they'll have a lot of things there you can take a look at and download, and orchestral horn parts, which is the best resource here. Orchestral scores and orchestral horn parts. Blanksheetmusic.net is a place where you can download blank sheet music for our semester project. And when I was teaching theory classes, I had some older ladies who really loved this website because you can go in and change the settings so that your staves, are larger. So if you have eyesight issues and want to write on really large staves, this is a great website to go, and you can kind of customize your blank sheet music for your project. And then the rest of what I have attached here is a schedule of our horn classes, what you're going to be learning in each horn class. So that's one of the great things about doing everything so far ahead this semester is I can kind of give you an idea ahead of time what we're going to be learning and when. And here you see I've given you a list of not only the classes and what we're learning, but also when you're going to watch that horn class. So for class number 1, you're going to watch it before lesson number 1. And your lesson number 1 will happen in that week, August 24th through August 28th. Like at the very end, class number 14, you're going to watch that before your last lesson, which is after break, the week of November 30th through December 4th. So that one, you'll probably have several weeks where it'll be online and you can take a look. There's a grade scale. There's one other thing that was on the first page, I think, maybe I didn't put it on there, that I forgot to mention. There's one Monday when we have no school for a holiday, and so if you have a Monday lesson, we will have to think about rescheduling those lessons, but we're going to do that early on, and we'll take care of it hopefully before scheduling becomes a real issue here at school. Okay, you'll see the grade scale at the bottom of the syllabus. So this is CSU's grade scale that I'm adhering to. CSU's policies and guiding principles, you can go and click there. And then also please refer to the CSU Honor Pledge. I have not given, received, or used any unauthorized assistance. So especially in something like horn lessons and horn class, you guys are going to be doing so much creative work that, it's all going to be generated from your own minds. So hopefully that won't be an issue. I love the Horn Studio Honor Code that John sends out to the studio every year. I love that you all consciously pledge to treat each other with honor and dignity. If you were to read this list and substitute, all of my future colleagues for CSU Horn Studio, then you have a great list of daily affirmations for how to treat people in your everyday life, not just your colleagues. Obviously, this is not always easy or always possible. You'll fail at it sometimes, I fail at it sometimes, but you have to have a set of principles to follow. And that means that you can always try to do the right thing, or at least make amends when you don't. Being a musician means being a member of a community and all of the complexities that are involved with that. So I am going to take your Horn Studio pledge. Number 1, I will support with my words and my actions the Horn Studio at Colorado State University. Number 2, I will be constructive in my dealings with colleagues in the studio. Number 3, I will actively try to help other members of the studio and create a more positive environment in which all members of the studio can learn and excel to their greatest potential. Number 4, I will not say anything negative or in any way degrading about any colleague in the horn studio to anyone other than the individual in question or the horn teacher. Number 5, I will make every attempt to phrase my concerns expressed to a colleague in a positive and supportive way. Number 6, I think I may have doubled number there perhaps. I will not participate in any conversation, passively or actively, that unduly or any way maliciously criticizes one of my colleagues in the horn studio. Number 7, I will actively try to promote understanding, communication, and camaraderie among my studio colleagues. Number 8, I will not say anything at any time about a colleague in the horn studio that I would not say directly to that colleague. Number 9, I will not make any statement to or about a colleague that is not intended to be helpful and constructive or funny. Jokes are acceptable. Horn players like jokes. Number 10, I will make every attempt to be fully prepared and on time to all musical functions of which I am a part. Number 11, I will always maintain myself as the very best example of the qualities, both musically and personally, that I expect to see in my colleagues. Just a few thoughts on taking notes. I highly recommend keeping a notebook or a binder where you can take notes during horn class. Me personally, I'm the kind of person who I forget things 10 seconds after they leave my brain. I have a terrible memory and a terrible concept of time, and my sense of direction isn't great either. I wonder if those things are connected. I've always been really jealous of people who have brains that easily retain things like numbers and dates. Those are not my strengths. Anyway, the weakness that is my bad memory turned out to be a big benefit to me along the road because I had to train myself to write everything down that I need to do, every date that belongs in my calendar, and I became an excellent note taker in class. Now, taking notes on your computer is fine. It's certainly better than nothing. But there have been scientific studies that show that humans remember things better when they write them down by hand using a pen and paper. So although it may slow you down as a note taker, all of you are going to know some of the things that I'm talking about already. So I recommend only taking notes for things that you didn't already know and really want to remember. And that way, these items will further stand out in your mind in the future because they're not surrounded on paper by things that you don't really need to be reminded of. Also, I want you guys to think about your setup for lessons. Some of you may be setting up to have online lessons for the very first time, and maybe others of you want to upgrade your setup from what you were doing last spring. So here are some thoughts for you to consider. Where will you have your lessons? Do you need to reserve a place at school? Do you have a place at home or your dorm room? Maybe even in the stairwell of the dorm? And if you do that, maybe put up signs saying what you're doing. Or maybe you have a place outside your dorm or outside the music building that gets really good Wi-Fi. I personally enjoy standing for lessons, so if you have Wi-Fi, you can even go outside, put your computer on a brick wall or something, maybe a second stand, and then you don't even need a chair. You might want to bring a few clothespins or like a plexi for the wind, but I mean, I think it'd be fun to have an outside lesson. When we met back in July as brass faculty, we were told that you're all going to have practice rooms assigned to you at the beginning of the semester and that those times would stand for the full semester. I'm not sure if that's still the case. But this made me think of two things. First, if you need to sign out a practice room time for your lessons, be sure you take care of that as soon as you can. Hopefully, I already have a lesson scheduled out to you by the time you're watching this. But secondly, I wondered if each of you was going to have access to a practice room every day. It seems like it might not be possible just in terms of the logistics involved with airing out the practice room safely. So, I collected some thoughts on ways you can practice without a practice room. I'm calling this pandemic practice. So here are some thoughts on how you can pandemic practice just about anywhere. If it's just you without your horn, you can listen to the music either with or without the score. You can sing your part. You can sing your part while doing fingerings. You can listen while doing fingerings. These are all different types of mental rehearsal. You can also visualize, where you imagine yourself in the performance space and think through the performance process in real time from beginning to end. It's the in real time part that's the challenge. If you add just your mouthpiece, you can also buzz with a recording, or buzz while doing fingerings. And some people use a burp for this, B-E-R-P. It's this thing right here. It's a funny name for a product that attaches your mouthpiece to the side of your lead pipe so that you can buzz at the same angle and with the same pressure as when you're playing your horn. And then you can more easily practice buzzing and doing fingerings at the same time. Let's say you have access to some electronics, or you want to purchase some small electronics that will be helpful for your pandemic practice life. My favorite tuner app is called Tonal Energy, Tonal Energy. It costs a few bucks, $4 or $5 last time I checked, but it has a tuner and a metronome with lots of useful functions. It has a recording function, and it shows a smiley face when you're in tune. You can set the tuner to be more or less reactive or sensitive, which is very helpful when you're starting out working with a tuner. With just a tuner and a metronome and your mouthpiece, you can do some of the mouthpiece warm-ups that I'll show you in our horn class on fundamentals. Another electronic piece of equipment that I find helpful for these mouthpiece warm-ups is my rollout compact piano. It was about $30. You can also find keyboard apps on your phone. I found one that was free for getting your starting pitch on your mouthpiece warm-ups. Or you could enter the whole warm-up into a notation program like Sibelius or Finale, press the play function, and buzz along. What about tools that help you practice on your actual instrument? If you have an okay situation for making noise but you can't be too loud, then just practice with your regular mute. If you really can't make any noise while practicing, consider investing in a silent brass for French horn. I just use the mute portion as a good practice mute, but it also comes with electronics that you can plug in and headphones. You can hear different room sounds, so it's like you're practicing in a bigger space with no mute at all. The silent brass and the notation systems, the Sibelius and the Finale, are the only things on this list that are kind of expensive. So those might be good, suggestions for holiday or birthday presents. I wanted to mention that I uploaded an excellent fingering chart from Philip Farkas's The Art of French Horn Playing to our documents, and I've highlighted the standard ranges in which we play our B-flat horn and our F horn. We're going to talk about alternate fingerings this semester, and you'll see some of these on this chart. But for right now, if you just need a standard fingering chart, especially for the low register, go ahead and download this chart. Notice that it starts in bass clef. We're going to work on bass clef quite a bit this semester. The treble clef section starts at the middle C and continues all the way to the high register at the end of the page. For those of you who will be studying with me this semester, I have a very exciting project that we're going to undertake together. With my studio at UNR, I loved having semester-long activities that we would do together as a horn class. For example, one semester we had a cadenza writing competition where we each learned the first movement to Mozart's Horn Concerto No. 3 in our lessons, and then each student wrote their own cadenza to that concerto, and I helped them out, but it was all their ideas. Everyone performed their cadenza at Horn Day that year, and I had 3 judges who selected the winning cadenza. That person won a small prize in addition to hearing me perform their cadenza along with the whole concerto with the school orchestra. That was sort of the winner reveal. In another semester, we had a studio Olympics where students worked up some of the fundamental exercises that we are going to learn together in a few horn classes from now. They then competed head-to-head with their fellow students while their colleagues served as blind judges. They couldn't see who was playing and selected a winner for each Olympic event. The overall winners were 3 students who tied with the highest medal rankings for the semester, and they each received a copy of one of my favorite orchestral recordings, Bruckner's Symphony No. 7 with the Chicago Symphony, and Dan Gingrich is playing the lead Wagner tuba part on that. So any of you guys need a good recording to listen to, that's the one. And just as a side note, the Wagner tuba is a secondary instrument for horn players that's called for in some works by Wagner, Bruckner, and Strauss. And it looks kind of like a skinny euphonium, so you can Google that if you've never heard of it before. In another semester, my studio learned Mahler's Symphony No. 1. It has 8 horn parts, so we doubled up on them. We learned it all together as a studio, and we played with the recording. And then that same day, we went to hear San Francisco perform it. It's one of the best symphonies in the world, and we even got to meet the horn section of the San Francisco Symphony after the show. So, since January, I've been thinking about what kind of project I'd like to do with you this semester. When I visited CSU in fall 17, I brought along an etude from one of my favorite etude books to perform for the studio. The etude book is called Just Desserts by Lowell Shaw. You may know his name because Lowell Shaw composed some of our most fun chamber music for horns, the Bipperies for 2 horns, Tripperies for 3 horns, and a huge collection of Fripperies for 4 horns. Mr. Shaw was writing these pieces to help his students learn how to play the rhythms, harmonies, and styles in the big band genre. In the foreword to this etude book, Mr. Shaw says that at the end of a long practice session, he would allow himself a little fun time to improvise. So these etudes came largely out of those improv sessions. So for Mr. Shaw, it's like the prize of improvisation was a reward for his hard work, almost like a dessert after a sensible dinner. Personally, I've had an up and down relationship with etudes over the years. When I first started taking horn lessons in high school, I loved learning new etudes. They were the longest form compositions I was playing by myself at that time, and I could learn a whole song. But by the time college rolled around and I discovered solos and chamber music, my interest in etudes faded pretty quickly. And I remember one lesson with my teacher, Gail, where I complained that playing etudes was like the 7th level of hell. And Gail said, well, that explains your lessons lately. And I love that story because it shows how honest she was willing to be with me as a teacher. And that's something now that I really appreciate. Hey, results come from hard work and dedication, not from complaining or being lazy about assignments that I didn't want to do. After I finished my master's degree a few years down the road, I started to realize that deep down I had a secret fear of sight reading. Like, so secret it was almost like I'd hidden it from myself. Like, I was okay at sight reading, but more than anything, it just made me super anxious to do it, either with musicians or even just by myself. So that's a hard hurdle to jump for a musician who needs to learn new music on a regular basis. It occurred to me that my practice life was also stalled out because of this fear of sight reading. In practice sessions, I would play the same tunes over and over that I already knew. And even though I loved them, after the 56th time, you're going to have less interest in something than after the 12th. In order to directly address my fear of sight reading and also to get more variety into my practice diet, I decided to start sight reading through etude books that had spent years on my shelf untouched. I mean, what better way to improve at something than to practice it? At this point, I've played all the way through a number of the standard etude books for horn. I always write down the date that I read the etude, and if I find an etude that I especially like, I'll also put a star next to it and say what I like about it. That way, I can always go back and find something to play that I know I'm gonna like. So this was a game changer, not only for my sight reading and my playing in general, but also for my enjoyment of music. Now I feel like I can sight read just about anything without fear. And I also understand that if I mess up, the world will not end. So this semester, we're going to study some of the great etude composers for horn, most of whom are some of the greatest horn players and teachers throughout history. We're also going to take a page from Lowell Shaw's book and write our own etude. I'll be there to help and guide you every step of the way, and I think we will have so much fun. At the end of the semester, we'll record our etude so that your colleagues can hear what you created. The rest of what I want to talk to you about today is I'd like to share with you some thoughts on practice. The first is something I picked up from my husband Adam only since the pandemic started, and I love it. You'll hear me mention Adam often because our musical lives are intertwined on purpose. You'll also get to meet him in a few weeks in horn class, and he has fantastic quarantine hair, so there's something for you to look forward to. The thing Adam shared with me that I'm really enjoying putting to use is a practice matrix. I've uploaded a blank version that he made. The file has 2 pages, so you can print two-sided. So just know if you print it one-sided, it's going to print 2 copies. If you look here, there's 7 spaces for category, material. There's spaces for category, material, and then 7 days of the week. Now, I'm not going to require you to use this. It's just there for your purposes if you would like to organize your practice this way. So I uploaded a copy of one of my practice matrices from this summer to show you how I've been using it to help me get a lot of variety, but also structure into my practice. In the category column, I created a section for horn-related things that I could do at work, though work is home now and home is work, and we're all going through the looking glass, so what are you going to do? So I don't do those things at work anymore, I just do them at home. Then I have 2 sets of warm-up categories, each grouped together with a bracket. I have a section for excerpts and an audition solo. I have sections for etude practice, and I also have a line for gig practice. And I have some sections for things like listening, exercise, and mental health, which are peripherally related to horn playing, but very important. A few things to mention here. I didn't play every day of the week. I took a day off. It's mentally healthy to take a day off, but it's especially good for you physically if you're playing a good bit. So we'll talk more about that down the road. And also, on some days, I didn't do what was on the practice matrix at all. I played duets with Adam, one of the benefits of being quarantined with a fabulous musician. And on another day, we played Mahler 5 with a recording. There are 4 things that I did almost every day: scales, lip trills, bass clef etude, and some kind of physical activity. For everything else, I was shooting for variety and also balance so that my practice stays interesting and that my playing can stay nimble while there's no gigs to play to keep challenging those skills. In fact, when I got halfway through the week, I made a wish list on the back of the matrix that you can't see. Like, what am I missing? What was I neglecting this week? So you can see in the second half of the week, I added more excerpts into my playing diet, which turned out to be a lot of fun. So that's a tool for you to use if you have any interest in it, and some thoughts from me as I'm learning how to use it myself. Now, let's talk about a practice method that I developed for myself as a result of sight reading all those darn etudes. It's just a basic way to organize your thoughts as you learn a new piece of music, and it's really flexible so it can suit your individual needs. I've written out an in-depth accounting of my relationship with practice on the blog of the website that Adam and I share. So if you'd like to go read the blog post about practicing, which is called Practice Makes Pleasure, or if you want to hear some fun horn music or tuba music or horn and tuba music, you can visit www.brass-quest, like a journey.com. www.brass-quest.com. This is an excerpt from that post, Practice Makes Pleasure, that I'm going to intersperse with some demonstrations so you can really see how this practice method works. Step number 1, sight read. When sight reading, I first make a promise to myself to read the piece from beginning to end on the first time through. If you get derailed and have to go, take a second to get back on, that's no big deal. My goal is just to get to the end. And then before you play, be sure you acknowledge our 2 signatures, the key signature, which gives you the notes you're going to play, and the time signature, which tells you about meter and rhythm. You might also take a quick glance down the page to see if you have meter changes, key changes, or anything else surprising like accidentals, big jumps, extreme registers. On the first time through, though, I don't pay attention to dynamics or accidentals. I'm only concentrating on notes and rhythms. By simplifying the information that I'm paying attention to on the page, I'm able to absorb it a lot more quickly. I think that the scariest parts of sight reading are fear of the unknown and fear of failure because you're approaching something unknown. This is why so many of us get into a rut of only practicing pieces that we know, and when we get bored with those, nothing at all. But after only one time playing through a piece, you're already about 80% acquainted with all of the information on the page. When sight reading, it's important to remember that this is the worst it's going to sound. Naturally, step 2 will already be much better. Also, keep in mind that the point of practicing is not to sound perfect right away. Practicing is for progress. Personally, I like to conclude the sight reading step as quickly as possible so that I can move immediately into making music. I'm going to sight read a little snippet from the Big Red Book, or the 335 Selected Melodious, Progressive, and Technical Studies for French Horn, compiled and edited by two hornists from great American symphony orchestras in the middle of the 20th century, Max Potag from the Chicago Symphony and Albert Andrade from Cincinnati. We used to call book 1 of this 2-book compilation the Big Blue Book, and book 2 the Big Red Book, but now book 1 is published with a kind of a cream-colored cover. You can find etudes from all of the great French horn etude composers, plus some solos and chamber music horn parts in these books. And some of those chamber music horn parts are hard to find otherwise, unless you're playing the piece. There's no index, which is a little tough. I'm going to pick something randomly from the back of the Red Book because I haven't gotten all the way through this one yet, so I know I have plenty of fresh material to work with there. So for this demonstration, I'll use a short excerpt from a longer etude, but also something that I don't think I'm going to be able to perfectly sight read right away. So I'm just going to, let's see, there's some chamber stuff, Chimney of King Rene, the Mozarts are in here. There's a Handel thing. Let's see. Okay, here's a Gallet thing. I'm just gonna play maybe the first line and a little bit of this, and I will I'll sight read this short section, and then I'm going to scan this and put it up on the video so that you can see what I'm reading while I'm playing it. And for this first step, I just want to go all the way through the excerpt I've chosen. I'm just going to do that first line a little bit. So I promise to go all the way through, and I'm concentrating on notes and rhythms. So notes-wise, I see 3 flats, and that means that either we're in E flat major or we're in C minor. And just looking at the notes I'm playing in that first scale, I'm kind of betting it's E flat major because those notes don't really belong in C minor, that scale there. And then rhythms-wise, let's look at our time signature. So that's 4/4, common time. Although he's marked the the tempo marking in half time or in cut time, which doesn't help us out very much. So I don't know why he didn't just write it in cut time in the time signature. I'm sure he had his reasons. And then we can see there's something interesting going on here with the pickups because they're sort of irregular. They don't really fit into our, regular 4-quarter note scheme here. So I want to be aware of that. Just looking ahead, I also see there's a trill I want to pay attention to. So here we go. I'm just going to give it a read. Okay, so that was my first time through notes and rhythms. Not bad.
Step number 2, play it again. At this point, I will play through the piece again in its entirety. When I first started to develop a system for organizing my practice, I used to skip this step. But eventually I realized that with one more run through, I could pick up a lot of the things that had slipped past in the first go. Step 1 focuses on notes and rhythms, so in step 2, the focus moves to the things that decorate the notes, so dynamics and articulations. The more things my brain could work out subconsciously, the less I'll need to actively practice in step 3. The other function of step 2 requires a bit more awareness. At the end of step 2, I note what items in the etude still don't sound as good as everything else. These items need actual practice rather than simple repetition, and they will be the focus of step number 3.
So now I'm going to do step 2 with the music I've picked out here. This time I'm adding in dynamics and articulations, and at the end of the step I'll make note of anything I need to actually practice or work out in greater detail in step 3. Okay, not bad. So, in terms of things I want to practice for the next step, I'm already getting the tempo a little faster. So, I know that's going to be one of the challenges here based on the metronome marking that he's given us. So, working it up to a faster tempo is, we've got plenty of tricks to do that. That's something I'm going to work on in step 3. Also, I think I could have done the dynamics a little better, switching to that mezzo forte and being a little lighter on the kind of dancing eighth note lines that has slurred and staccato. I'm not 100% sure that I'm getting all the slurs and the staccatos in the right place. So maybe while I'm working up the tempo, especially of that 16th note passage, maybe I'm also, starting slow and figuring out, where those slurs go exactly, so that I could get it ingrained and then transfer that to a faster tempo. And I don't know. I think the B flat to E flat is okay. It doesn't really sound like I'm super solid on it. And really, that E flat should be the rival because that's my tonic. So I really want the B flat to drive to that E flat. So that's something I'm going to practice in my step 3 as well. And maybe making the trill sound nice and fancy. That always helps, it benefits from a little bit of attention.
Step 3 is time to clean up the details. In any given etude, you may have 3 to 6 spots that require kind of microscopic work. Step 3 is where we use the creative musical problem-solving methods that we've learned from music educators our whole lives. Play it slower, play it faster, play it an octave up or down, play it with a different articulation, play it backwards, add a note, start at the end, and going backwards add one more previous note on each repetition. Play it with a different rhythm, play it on your mouthpiece, clap it, sing it, look for alternate fingerings, do slow to fast metronome work, do mental rehearsal to see if the mistake is in how you're hearing it in your head. And if none of that works, think of a way to creatively address the problem yourself. Step 3 is one of the 2 most important steps in this practice method.
So in the excerpt I've been reading for you here, we just named some spots that, we could practice that will probably raise the level of this whole excerpt right away, just by paying a little attention to those spots that are not at the same level as everything else just yet. So, let's see. One of the first things I mentioned here is tempo, and that I'm going to use this 18th or 16th note section with the different articulations to work up that tempo and simultaneously make sure I'm putting those slurs and the articulations in the right place. So, here it's, a simple slow to fast thing, works really well, obviously. Yeah, and I can even go slower because I'm not really paying attention to my articulations. Yeah, and sometimes I'll do like bump it up, 8 clicks or what have you. Sometimes I'll just do a slow, medium, fast. And then, not even worry about the metronome, but just like here loosely is, where I am at a slow tempo. Here's where I am at a medium tempo. Let's see where I am at a fast tempo. So here's the medium. Okay, so I just missed one little articulation in there, but not bad. So let's see. One, two. Okay, so in that last bar, or in the last bar of the first line, I really don't want to slur that D and the C, or maybe I want to slur something else in there with it. So I'm just going to put a little microscope on that for a second. So I'm just trying to add one further back every time and remember not to play D flats. Okay, so let's do a fast version. And that's, I just worked that up just right here for you in 2 minutes. Took no time at all. Just a few different tricks, the same kind that you learned from your band directors and your horn teachers all through the years. And now that sounds a whole lot better. So let's move back to a few of the other things. I was looking at that trill. So one thing I can do is kind of hit that accent, back off, and then drive my air. That helps kind of keep that trill really smooth. And then I can sort of arrive at a louder dynamic level so I can back off on that mezzo forte, fix that issue as well. So I'm going to try to do that in context in just a minute. I still want to pull back a little bit more toward the beginning of that trill. So that's something I can continue to practice. And then the other thing I mentioned was that first full bar, the B flat, E flat. So it's cruel to just try to start up there. I'm going to start from the beginning here. And the first thing I'm going to do is just play up to that B flat and then sing the E flat, because I want to make sure that my ear is correct first. If my ear is not hearing it correctly, then that's what's causing the issue, not any playing problems, and no playing problems that I try to address will fix that problem. So I want to fix my brain first, and then we'll see if there's anything on the horn that needs to be adjusted. Ba. And I even went ba, so I'm still hearing it low. So I'm going to go ahead and play that again. 1, 2. Ba. Much better. Now I'm going to try to play it. And let's see, I'm going to put kind of an in-between step here where I'm going to do a gliss down from that B flat to the E flat. And the purpose of that, I can do it as slow as I want. I'm just trying to taste where that E flat is and not try to overshoot it. So I just want to go taste the harmonics going down, find that E flat, and not go below it. So there it is. I found it, and it's not as far away as I thought it was, which is revealing. So, I see this huge interval. I want to make, 2 octaves or more. It's only an octave and a half. And just by trying the harmonics in between there, I got that figured out. And so now I'm going to try to drive that B flat energy-wise into the E flat so I can resolve on the tonic. 1, 2. I'm going to try that one more time, get that A flat in there. Yeah, so a lot better than it was the first time around, for sure, and even better than it was the second time around, because I brought all the things that weren't so great up a notch. They're not perfect yet, but eventually they're going to be up to the things that are easy for me to play right away.
Step number 4, perform it. Step 4 is the other most important step in this method. It is so hard for us musicians to find a way to practice performing. Our brain has the unfortunate tendency to get stuck in the nitpicky detail practice stage. When organizing my approach to practice, one of the issues I wanted to address in my playing was the need to go past the detail stage and engage in performance in my everyday life. So after I work out the details in step 3, I perform the etude for myself. In order to do this with any kind of authenticity, I must, number 1, put myself into a performance frame of mind. Number 2, accept any mistakes I make and move on instantly. And number 3, consciously dedicate myself fully to enjoyment of the music making process. This is not the time to be critical of one's shortcomings, but the time to take pleasure in being a musician. This is the payoff for all the hard work, a moment to perform for and enjoy yourself.
So now I get to perform this etude just for fun. I don't expect it to be perfect. That's not my goal. My goal is to enjoy it, and luckily I've picked out a really fun, this is a cute little etude. So it's going to be easy to enjoy doing this. And you know what? If I drop things, I'm not going to worry about it because I'm going to practice this for several days. And if I like this enough, maybe the rest of my life. So I'll pick them up along the way as I continue to enjoy this cool piece of music.
I usually don't practice exactly like this. This method is only a loose guide to organize my thoughts. If you're reading something new that you can digest really easily, maybe you combine steps 1 and 2 and try to pick up all the notes, rhythms, dynamics, and articulations on the first go around. Then just note what needs extra attention. If things are going really well, you might stop along the way to do step 3 as you come up on the few spots that need extra help. For me, the thing that's most important these days is step 4. I like to always perform for myself before I set a piece of music aside for the day. If I know the piece well enough, sometimes that's all I need to do, and then it's just all gravy. I mean, performing for yourself without needing to practice, that's pretty much the dream. On the other hand, if I'm reading something that's very challenging, I may only do 1 step per practice session, culminating with a first performance on the 4th day. If it's like a really tough contemporary etude, maybe I'll even split it in half and read 1 half today, 1 half tomorrow. Still, the aim is to get to performing, even if it takes you, eventually 8 days to get there.
There are numerous benefits to practicing with this method as a loose guide. I can generally learn an etude from top to bottom in 15 minutes. In that amount of time, I will have played it through 3 times, all while focusing on the notes and rhythms or the dynamics and articulations. I'll have actually practiced the tough spots, and I get a chance to perform it for myself. So why not give this method a shot on an etude that you'll be working on this week? I know you've got a couple probably on your plate that I've assigned to you. I'd like to mention that this is a great way also to approach rehearsing an ensemble for those of you who will become music directors someday. Even if you don't tell them what you're doing and you just use this process to structure your own thoughts in the rehearsal, you are bound to keep them engaged if they get to play so much, but you still get to use your creative problem-solving techniques to improve the product as well.
Now, I am sad to report, through undergoing this process, I was forced to accept that playing in an ensemble is not the same thing as practicing your instrument. Sorry, everyone, I'm just as disappointed as you are. In my early professional life, I would have had a rehearsal and called that my playing for the day.
But since the growth of my practice life, I've realized that rehearsals do not fulfill the role that practice plays in the mental health of a musical individual. While practicing is a relationship between oneself and one's own brain, rehearsal is a negotiation between the brains of all the artists involved. I found that when I was not practicing effectively as an individual, my self-esteem suffered, and when my self-esteem suffered, my ensemble playing suffered, even when I was playing in ensembles for 2 to 4 hours on a daily basis. Now that I have a healthier relationship with practice, I can often recognize other musicians with active personal practice lives just from the way they sound. I learned a larger lesson through this part of my musical journey. I realized that practicing is really a relationship with one's full self. In order to make music, I had to organize my brain. Then I had to convince my brain that an etude is not a lot of music and that learning it could be easy. Then I had to convince my brain to convince my body to undertake the challenges of the actual physical playing of my instrument because I knew the reward would be worthwhile. Then my brain had to problem solve all of the issues so that I could make the music sound the way I wanted to, and finally I began to allow myself the prize of one last time purely for joy. And with that said, I'd like to play for you one of my favorite etudes from Lowell Shaw's Just Desserts, number 5. Stick around for your attendance assignment at the end. Your horn class attendance assignment will vary some weeks, but this week students who are studying with me and students who are studying with Sean have the same assignment. I'll read you a few questionnaire type questions so we can get to know you a little better as players. Please answer each question and then email your answers to the teacher you're studying with. You may want to pause between questions. Number 1, what is your phone number? This is just for texting in case lessons are running late, etc. Number 2, what etude books do you own? Number 3, what solos have you played? Number 4, what skills would you like to target this semester? Number 5, what's your comfort level with bass clef? How about with transposition? And number 6, this is optional. Optional for my students, and Sean's students, you can decide if you want to answer this as well, if you're interested in learning an excerpt. Each of you, if you have a favorite excerpt that you've always been interested in learning, and you want to spend some time on that this semester, then send that to myself or Sean. But if you don't have an excerpt that you've always wanted to learn, don't worry, I'm going to pick out some excerpts for you anyway, based on the skills that you want to target and based on your strengths and weaknesses. So I hope you've enjoyed horn class number 1, and send in your attendance assignment 24 hours before your first lesson, and we'll see you next week for horn class number 2.